Let's move to the line of contact and discuss the small changes that have taken place over the past 24 hours. We continue to receive information from the Sujansky Bulge. Russian Federation forces have established full fire control on Route 07 between the settlements of Suja and Yunikivka. A large number of objective control shots are already being published, recording the destruction of equipment. All these episodes take place on this very line, which tells us that gradually, let's say, the stranglehold around the Sujansky Bulge is narrowing. The multiplicity of losses increased by multiples, at least in equipment and personnel. And even not so much in the course of combat operations, as in the course of rotation, transportation, evacuation of the wounded and so on. In any case, this is already the beginning of the end of the whole Sujan story. Of course, until the last shot is fired, until the last square kilometer along the border, there will be many more weeks, many more days and many more assault operations, but this process cannot be stopped. Next, we're moving a little bit further north. Today we received information from the area of Zuravka. Quite reliable pro-Russian cartographers have recorded a small rollback on this section of the front. They claim that Russian formations have crossed the border, and at the moment the fighting is going on for the central part of the settlement. The northern part of Zuravka in Sumy region is already under the control of the Russian Federation, while active fighting continues in the central and southern parts. The AFU is trying to transfer reinforcements and pull up reserves, but all these manipulations the Ukrainian side is forced to carry out in the zone of reach of Russian corrective munitions and drones, which reduces the chances of stabilizing the front line in this area to a minimum. If we talk about the northern part, today some pro-Russian cartographers continue to record a gradual advance. In fact, Orlovka and Pogrebki are the most remote settlements of Suja, so the probability that under the pressure of the Russian army the AFU will be forced to retreat southward towards the settlement of Kazakyalaknya is extremely high. In general, the Ukrainian side is likely to start regrouping here in the near future. If the Ukrainian army loses 100 to 120 soldiers, who may be on this section of the front, it may lead to the collapse of the defense line and the beginning of the Russian forces' advance deep into Sumy region. Next, we move to the North Kupiansk direction, where fighting continues on the Ukrainian side of the Oskol River. Over the past 24 hours, the Ukrainian army has made several attempts to counterattack towards Dvyreknya using a large amount of equipment. However, according to objective control footage, the Ukrainian side only managed to temporarily reach the Dvyreknya-Zapadnaya highway. The equipment that reached its destination was subsequently destroyed. It is difficult to say what is the fate of the Ukrainian landing force in this area. Perhaps the R-79 road between Zapadnoy and Dvyreknya has indeed been physically cut, and we should soon expect attempts at counterattacks by the AFU towards Zapadnoy. So far no such attacks have been carried out, but the situation is developing in an extremely interesting way. We will observe whether the Russian side will manage to hold the bridgehead a little further south, in the area of Stepova-Novosielovka. To all appearances, the Russian army has launched a large-scale offensive to minimize, destroy and eliminate this pocket, this artillery bag located east of Kupiansk and the Oskol River. This bubble is gradually shrinking under the pressure of Russian forces. At least, this is indicated by the data of corrections on maps provided by various mapping services, including both neutral sources and Russian sources. This is the kind of small adjustment near Stepova-Novosayolka that is noted by various sources. A little further south, the Russian side is gradually continuing to expand the zone of control along the Zarabets River on the Ukrainian side between the Ukrainian armed forces settlements of Ivanivka and Novolubretskoy. At the moment, the width of the front is at least inside this red line. We are then moving towards Zareknoy and the village of Torskoy. Here, apparently, the Russian army is moving to the final stage of mopping up and the final assault. In the near future, the first attempts to enter the village of Torskoy from both the north and the east are likely to begin. If we look at the geography of precision-guided weapons strikes and the map of drone operations, we can say with certainty that at least today or yesterday the Russian side has established full and confident control over the main supply route, which runs from Slavyansk through Lyman, onto Zareknoye and Torskoy. All the equipment and personnel that the AFU is trying to move along this road are under heavy attacks from the Russian Federation, resulting in high losses for the Ukrainian army. A few more days of such a blockade and the Russian side will move to a ground operation in order to finally dislodge Ukrainian units from the Russian side of the Zarabets River. This will allow the Russian forces to level the front line and gradually begin to move towards Seversk from the north. If we talk about the Seversk direction, various adjustments from various sources and cartographic experts continue to be published today regarding the situation in the Belagorovka area. There is now no doubt that in the course of the fighting and the decisive assault by the Russian Federation, Belagorovka has come under the full control of the Russian army. At the moment, apparently, regrouping is underway, possibly clearing some premises, streets and buildings. After these procedures are completed, the Russian side will start moving further west, towards Grigorovka and Serebryanka. The goal may be to meet the Russian formations that are moving towards Torskoy and further towards the Seversky Donets River. Perhaps the two groups of troops will meet somewhere in the area of Dranovka and Serebryanka in order to subsequently deliver a powerful blow to the northern outskirts of the settlement of Seversk. Then we are moving towards the settlements of Chasov Yar and Toretsk. Over the past 24 hours, the map here has not changed, but quite a few shots of objective control by the Russian Federation have been published. There are strikes on artillery, mortar and machine gun positions, temporary deployment points, warehouses and other facilities. In fact, there is a gradual cleansing of this direction before a possible decisive assault towards Konstantinovka. Over the course of the day, Ukrainian formations spread information that Ukrainian units managed to conduct a series of successful counterattacks towards Toretsk, during which they took full control of the central part, including the territory near the stadium. However, no objective monitoring footage confirming this information has been published so far. Perhaps in the next few hours the evidence will appear, after which it will be possible to decide whether it is worth updating the map or waiting for a few more days. In the Pokrovsky direction, the main military operations are unfolding in the area of Zverevorezhka. Here the Russian side is destroying all sorts of bridges to prevent Ukraine from organizing a new counteroffensive. Let me remind you that the last Ukrainian counteroffensive in the area of Peskanoy ended quite successfully for the Ukrainian side. They managed to take control of Peskanoy, at least for a few days. However, the settlement was subsequently recaptured by the Russian army, and all bridges in this area were destroyed, which makes it much more difficult to organize another strike. Therefore, the main actions are now unfolding in the Vstavka area, where the Ukrainian side may be trying to force the river and accumulate forces. However, Russian drones are actively working here. As soon as a more or less serious strike group accumulates, it is immediately destroyed by Russian UAVs. Then we move on to the Dnieper direction. Here, according to various sources, both pro-Russian and neutral, as well as Ukrainian formations managed to regain control over part of the village of Uspinovka during counterattacks. At the moment, about 67% of the village is under Ukrainian control. Let me remind you that as recently as yesterday, 50% of the village was controlled by the Russian Federation. Today, however, we see that the Ukrainian side has seized the initiative in the course of counterattacks. Perhaps we should expect more intensive attacks from the Ukrainian armed forces in the near future. Next we are moving a little further south, towards the Novopavlovskoy direction. Today, the pro-Ukrainian map service Deep State has noted and confirmed that the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to take full control of the western outskirts of Zaporizhia during the fighting. Based on the footage and the report of pro-Ukrainian cartographers, we have made a slight correction of the map in favor of the disputed territory. At the moment we are waiting for any geolocations that could confirm this. On Constantinople today, Ukrainian sources report that last night, between February 24th and 25th, Ukrainian formations managed to successfully leave Constantinople. At least, perhaps, more than 80% of Ukrainian soldiers managed to break out of the encirclement and reach the village of Bogodar. Perhaps someone else did not manage to do so. I will repeat once again, this information is now being circulated by the Ukrainian side, and Russian sources are still silent on this matter. Perhaps there is no serious and reliable information yet, so we are waiting for additional evidence or reports from other sources. Perhaps tomorrow, by the morning of February 26th, this pocket will already be marked by some cartographers as controlled by Russia. Next we are moving towards Velikaya and Novosayolka. There is also a fairly large number of various icons with flags here. Today there is information from absolutely all sources that the armed forces of the Russian Federation have managed to significantly expand the zone of control and move north of Velika Novosayolka towards the settlements of Dnipro and Energia. Also, the village of Skudnoy has now been operationally encircled, and in the near future, in all likelihood, we will receive some footage on the basis of which we will finally consolidate this territory. Although the Ukrainian side has not yet managed to build a full-fledged line of defense here, it still tried to organize at least a minimal front. However, in case of its breakthrough, it threatens to collapse the entire defense line up to the village of Guliapol. Further, we are moving towards the Zaporizhia direction, where the main news from the triangle of Pyatakhi, Lobkovo, Stepovoy comes from. According to various sources, including pro-Russian and neutral ones, the armed forces of the Russian Federation have managed to significantly expand the zone of control in Pyatakhi. At the moment, Pyatakhi has been almost completely cleared, and fighting is taking place over strongholds around the perimeter of this small village. It is hard to say whether this is a one-time action, or whether the Russian army plans to continue advancing towards Kamenskoye and Stepovoy. Time will tell. But in any case, this section of the front is worth keeping a close eye on. Concluding the review of the Zaporizhia direction, over the past 24 hours several objective control shots were published, including those confirming the presence of Russian soldiers and units in the dachas of the settlement of Kherson, that is, on the Russian side of the Dnieper River. In this footage, it is possible to observe assault actions on the part of the Russian Federation. Perhaps these are not assault actions, but rotation. It can be seen that it is carried out in relatively good weather conditions, which probably allowed the Russian side to carry it out without losses, since, most likely, drones do not fly in such conditions. At least on the Ukrainian side, this footage was geolocated. Based on this footage, some pro-Russian cartographers made small adjustments in favor of the Russian Federation. But in any case, regardless of whether this was a rotation or an assault, I would like to remind you that in recent days, information has been repeatedly circulated that before the possible start of negotiations or before the signing of an agreement, the Russian side might try to force the Dnieper River in order to take control of the entire Kherson region. Perhaps all these movements along the bank of the Dnieper River indicate that the Russian side is gradually preparing a bridgehead before the possible forcing of the river. And that's all for now, dear friends. The channel Military Bulletins reminds you that we condemn any violence in the world and call both sides to immediate negotiations to solve all problems diplomatically. Thank you for watching. Give us your likes and have a good day.